By the time the lake swallowed the last gold from the sky, I had already decided how the story would end. The quiet revenge I chose wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no smashed plates, just a series of small, precise moves that changed everything. If you saw the footage, it would look peaceful: water, pine trees, a dock breathing with little waves. But under that calm, I was holding my breath, waiting for the thing I set in motion to click into place. The click did come. And when it did, he finally looked at me like he knew. The night I stopped being the good one. My name is Mara, and I live in a small town tucked between a river and a freeway, the kind of place where people wave without fully stopping. I used to think that meant we were decent, you know? That if you keep your lawn mowed and bring brownies to the school fundraiser, life stays simple. I clung to that idea with white-knuckle hands even as little things with Ryan started to tilt, like picture frames slightly crooked after a truck passes by. It was dumb stuff at first, his phone face down, the smell of new cologne he couldn't name, a laugh delayed half a beat too long when I told him a story. He'd come home from late meetings, with a soft smile that didn't reach his eyes and this careful, almost gentle distance, like a person backing out of a room without letting the door click. I kept telling myself it was stress. Everyone's stressed. Rent goes up, cars break, you say things you don't mean, whatever. Then I found a folded receipt in the pocket of his hoodie when I was doing laundry. Yeah, I know, cliché, but that's where real life hides. It was for a hotel off the Interstate 2 exit south, charged to a card I didn't recognize. The memo on the receipt said, Bridge. Not capitalized, not part of a program, just that word, Bridge. My throat went dry in this scratchy way, and my hands wouldn't decide whether to shake or go numb. I shoved it back where I'd found it, like I'd just touched an outlet. A few days later, he started talking in his sleep again. He hadn't done that since we were brand new and he was still all soft edges. That night I heard him whisper, Kit, please. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan and counted the slow, wobbling turns. Kit. I didn't know a Kit. I told myself it could be anything, short for kitten, some random dream logic, but the name curled under my skin. My sister Jenna noticed before anyone else. We were sitting in my car parked behind the grocery store, eating fries out of the bag like teenagers. She said, You're chewing like you're mad at your molars. What's going on? I said I was fine, and of course my jaw locked up so hard it clicked. She reached over and squeezed the back of my neck, gentle, and said, Don't let him rewrite you. The next weird thing, a shoebox in our hall closet that I swear was never there. Inside were photos, old ones, Polaroid squares washed with that warm tone that makes every summer look innocent. They weren't of us. In one, Ryan is younger, hair longer, with his arm around a woman whose face is half turned away. On the back, in rushed blue pen, for the bridge we built. K. I felt that scratchy dryness again. I put the lid back on and slid the box behind winter boots, like hiding it would shrink it. I wasn't ready to be the person who searches phones or hires someone or, I don't know, makes a scene in a lobby. That never felt like me. But the more I tried to hold still, the more the room moved. He started leaving earlier, coming back with that careful distance, humming songs I didn't recognize. I watched him from the porch as he pulled into our driveway one afternoon, and there was this expression on his face, sadness mixed with relief, that made my chest feel hollow and heavy at once. So I did the smallest thing. I asked if I could borrow his old iPad for a recipe I'd bookmarked years ago. He barely looked up. Sure, passcode's the anniversary. He laughed, like that was romantic. I nodded and carried it to the kitchen, heart thudding like I'd sprinted. The anniversary he meant wasn't ours. I typed a different date, the only one that fit the word bridge, and the screen unlocked. Steam from the kettle fogged the corner of the iPad as the home screen bloomed open, too bright for the dim kitchen. I stood with my back to the window, fridge humming, the cicadas outside doing that saw blade song, and I told myself I was just looking for a recipe. My thumbs shook anyway. Icons lined up like polite soldiers. Photos. Messages. Notes. His world, flat and quiet, waiting. I opened photos first because it felt less like snooping and more like stepping into a living room. Thumbnails flickered past, him at a work site, a river with brown water shouldering past rocks, a blurry selfie I wasn't in. There was a shared album I didn't recognize. Its little gray icon had a bridge drawn in pencil, 2 lines, a span. The title was just one word, bridge. My teeth found the inside of my cheek and held. I didn't tap the album. I couldn't. Instead I backed out and opened notes. Pages of little lists slid up, hardware stores, gas totals, a to-do about picking up floorboards for someone named Lila. Buried in there were short, careful lines that read like breadcrumbs: meet by the trail, bring receipts, no names. Heat climbed my neck. Bridge wasn't a metaphor, it was a map. Ryan had always loved projects that made him feel needed. After his last job trimmed half the crew, he started staying late to help on neighborhood repairs, fixing fences after storms, patching potholes with cold mix he bought himself. I thought it was kindness. Maybe it was. But kindness doesn't ask for secrecy. Kindness doesn't need a second phone number under a nickname. I scrolled to contacts and there it was, Kit, tucked between Kyle from Little League and a locksmith we'd never called. The letters looked harmless, almost cute. My tongue went dry. I pressed the name and a thread opened full of polite bubbles and careful gaps. My hands felt too big. I set the iPad on the counter and flattened my palm over my chest until the thudding slowed. I should have called Jenna. I even typed her name, then watched the bubbles hover like tiny ghosts before deleting them. If I said it out loud, it would be real, and I wasn't ready for real. Denial isn't soft, it's a vice. It squeezes your ribs and makes you breathe in inches. I rinsed a mug that didn't need rinsing and stared at the dark window until my reflection steadied. When Ryan pulled into the driveway, I had already propped a cookbook on the stand and smudged sauce across a wooden spoon. He walked in with that careful distance again, a smile already half folded away. I kissed his cheek and tasted cold air. He told me a nothing story about traffic while he washed his hands for too long, sleeves pushed up like a man scrubbing a memory. I nodded in the right places and kept my breathing even. Later, water hammered the tile and I could hear him humming, low and tuneless. I went back to the iPad. The screen woke to the last thing I'd opened, that thread with a name that sat like a splinter. I scrolled just enough to feel the shape of it without letting the words land, like watching a movie with the sound off. There were meetups, errands, talk about supplies. There were gaps where pictures would load. My chest started the hollow heavy thing again. I clicked the little plus and typed a single sentence, nothing dramatic, just a nudge that could pass for logistics. I stared at what I'd written until the letters blurred and my thumb hovered above send. My heart went irregular, like tripping on a cracked sidewalk. I shifted my weight, listened for the water, told myself this was information, not betrayal. The words didn't care how I framed them. My thumb did what it wanted. I hit send just as the shower squeaked off. The kitchen clock made a little hiccup sound it always makes when the air conditioner kicks in, and in that tiny silence the message left, a blue comet vanishing. I put the iPad face down and wiped an invisible smear from the counter, fingers numb, jaw wired shut. Then the reply lighted the screen, fast, easy, like whoever was on the other end had been waiting with their phone in hand. On the screen the reply popped up before I could breathe. Got it. Same place by the river. Bring the ledger. You okay? The bubbles pulsed like a heartbeat. River. Ledger. Okay. None of those words belonged in our kitchen. I scrolled just enough to see the shape of what I'd stepped into. The tone was practical, checklists, reminders, no fluff. Half the messages landed after he told me he'd be working late. Others were those tiny acknowledgments that make you feel held, the kind that somehow understand your day. My throat tightened until it squeaked. I typed back with hands that didn't feel like mine, saying I might be late and asking how the span was holding. The answer hit instantly, like Kit had been mid-keystroke, noting it was solid and the boards were still slick from the last rain. My stomach pulled tight. Your guy. Was that Ryan? Or someone he was covering for? The bathroom fan wound down. Water ticked off tile. Another ping, and an image bloomed, a narrow footbridge over brown water, fresh planks pale against older ones. On the near rail, an orange toolbox sat open, and a hand rested there, just wrist and thumb. The scar along the wrist bone looked like a white thread pulled too tight. Ryan's bike crash left that mark. Recognition punched the air from me. I set the iPad down before I dropped it. Proof in my palm, and still my first instinct was excuses. Maybe it was outreach, a side project, a quiet kindness he thought I'd mock. But the shoebox in the closet wouldn't stop existing, the inscription on the back, that looping K, hooked like a fish inside my ribs. He came into the kitchen rubbing a towel through his hair, leaving damp commas on his shirt. "Smells good," he said, "too light." "Yeah, just sauce." His eyes slid to the iPad and away, careful. The air between us felt formal, like a waiting room where you pretend not to listen for your name. The thread snapped back to life. Kit mentioned a ledger in a tin and reminded him not to forget receipts for someone named Lila, said they'd promised. My tongue touched the back of my teeth and stayed there. Lila, there it was again, the name from notes, a thread under the rug you can't unsee once your toe catches it. Promise to who? For what? I typed a short confirmation and swallowed hard. Ryan reached past me for a glass, and in that too close inch I felt the old ache of wanting to believe we were still good. My jaw cramped, I forced it to unclench. "You look tired," I said. He smiled with only the bottom half of his face. "Long day." He set the glass down too gently. I told him I was running out, ice cream craving, the kind of errand that earns a laugh. He did laugh, soft and practiced. "Get the mint one." I nodded, grabbed my keys, and slipped the Polaroid from the shoebox into my pocket like a talisman. At the door I felt the weight of the iPad and, without looking, slid it into my tote. In the car, the world felt wider and too bright. I parked by the river trailhead and let the engine tick quiet. Cicadas stitched the dark together. I opened the thread again, thumb hovering, and told Kit I'd be there soon, letting it be his voice for one more borrowed minute. The dots appeared, disappeared, returned, the answer was patient. I rested my forehead on the steering wheel until the metal cooled my skin. Guilt kept trying to pretend it was kindness. "Don't go, don't spy, don't make it worse." Anger shook it off and told me to move. I stepped out and the river smell climbed up, mud, green, old rope. The path took me like it always had, steady and simple, a line to follow when you don't know who you are. Halfway down, I pulled out the photo, felt its stiff edges, and slid it back. Whatever sweetness it held tasted off now. The footbridge was ahead, a slice of lighter dark. Another buzz, a friendly nudge about not forgetting his apple. I didn't eat apples. Ryan did. I could see the rest of this night unspooling, slow and quiet, and I kept walking toward it. The footbridge looked narrower up close, the planks pale like fresh scars, the rail still beaded from an earlier drizzle. I stood in the brush for a second pretending I was adjusting my shoelace, breath snagging on every inhale, and then I heard him, Ryan, talking low in that careful tone he saves for strangers and bad news. Another voice answered, lighter but steady, a woman's, the syllables clipped like someone who learned to hold herself together a long time ago. I moved slow until I could see them through the willow fronds, Ryan in his old canvas jacket, and beside him a woman with a windbreaker and a baseball cap pulled low. An orange toolbox sat open between them, and that stupid apple sat on the rail like a prop that proved they'd planned this. Ledgers in the tin, the woman, Kit, it had to be, said, tapping a square cookie tin speckled with stars. "You logged the receipts for Lila's lumber?" Ryan glanced down. "I will tonight." He dragged a hand over his mouth, the scar catching a stripe of moonlight. "Money's tight." I had to float gas again. "From your household card?" Her voice softened without losing its edge. "She's going to see." "She already sees," he said, so quiet I almost missed it. My ribs pinched. He adjusted the apple, like that mattered. "I'll put it back when the grant hits." Grant. Lila. Gas. The words arranged themselves like magnets I didn't want touching. I stepped onto the bridge before I could talk myself out of it. The wood shifted, a small groan under my weight. Their heads snapped up together, that twin startle people get when they've been living in the same worry. Ryan's mouth opened and then stayed there, like a door blown wide and stuck. Kit's eyes swept me fast, hands, tote, face, and then settled, not hostile, not welcome. Protective, maybe. Of him? Of the tin? "Hey," I said, and my voice came out normal somehow. Trail was open. I hooked my thumb toward the parking lot like this was a coincidence, like I hadn't typed his words for him minutes ago. My fingers were buzzing, a soda fizz that hurt. "Mint was out," Ryan blurted, "because that's how we talk to each other when the floor tilts. Nonsense that pretends to be continuity." "I didn't, Mara, this is Kit," she said, stepping forward that half-inch that says she'll take the hit if one's coming. Up close she looked about our age, lines at the mouth that came from wind and worry more than years. A lock of hair escaped the cap and stuck to her cheek. She didn't bother tucking it back. She kept one hand on the tin. "We're finishing the log so we can put the paperwork in before the next rain." "For the bridge you built," I said without meaning to, and the words tasted metallic. Her eyes flicked to me and then to Ryan, a quick math problem she solved behind her expression. I swallowed. "Pretty piece of work." He nodded like a kid being graded. "It needed to be safe. People kept slipping." His voice kept trying to be cheerful and kept failing. The air smelled like wet wood and river rot. I could feel my pulse in my gums. Kit glanced at Ryan, and in that glance I saw something I'd been refusing to see, a history that doesn't need explanation, shorthand shaped by months or years of tasks done shoulder to shoulder. It hit me in a dumb, physical way, heat up the neck, knees hollow, tongue dry. I wanted to yell and I wanted to laugh and I wanted to be polite. All three crowded the doorway at once. "Lila?" I asked, and I made the name soft, like I wasn't trying to pry it up with a crowbar. Ryan flinched anyway. Kit didn't. "We promised a delivery," she said. "Receipts keep it clean." Her tone was steady, but the word promise lodged like a burr. She still hadn't let go of the tin. I watched that guarded hand and thought about the shoebox in our closet and the picture with the looping K and how betrayal can look like a person being careful. "Look," Ryan said, stepping toward me with his palms out, that old apology stance. "We can talk at home." He glanced down at the tin. His fingers flexed. "Sure," I said, and even I could hear the chill. My jaw kept trying to lock. I unclenched it with a little crack. "Bring your paperwork. The log, too. You know, the one that keeps it clean." I smiled in a way I didn't feel. Mint was really out, by the way. "I'll live." He winced. Kit's gaze dropped to my tote and paused. For a beat I thought she knew the iPad was in there, that she could see the faint heat of it like a thermal camera. She didn't move. "We're trying to keep this together," she said, and it didn't sound like a defense. It sounded like a fact that kept being too small for the job. "Then don't forget your ledger," I said, and I stepped around them like the conversation had ended. The bridge hummed underfoot. My shoulder brushed the rail where the apple waited, ridiculous and red. Ryan's breath caught. I heard it like a hiccup. At the far end I paused, hand on the last post, and looked back. The river took the weak light and broke it into 100 shaky pieces. Ryan had one hand on his neck. Kit had finally lifted the tin, holding it against her ribs like you hold something you'll hand over only when you have to. I nodded like neighbors do in parking lots, then kept walking, the path pulling me toward the lot, the tote heavy against my hip. I didn't look inside. I didn't need to. I could already feel the shape of what I would spread on our kitchen table, and the way the room would change when I did. Back home the house had that thin, hollow quiet where the fridge seems loud. I clicked the small lamp by the sink, wiped my palms on my jeans, and set the stage without moving anything dramatic. The Polaroid with the looping K went on the table, the motel receipt beside it, and the iPad open to the thread sat in the middle like a lit pond. I set a pot to simmer just, so the room would breathe. My mouth felt cottony, my jaw kept testing its own hinges. Headlights slid across the wall, slow as a boat's beam. The door opened and closed with his careful quiet. He took off his jacket like it might rip. "You cooked," he said, then stopped when he saw the table. I watched the recognition move through him and land in his shoulders. "Sit," I said, because standing made me feel like I was balancing on marbles. "I'm not going to yell. I need you to tell me what this is." "Start with Lila." He swallowed. "Lila runs the pantry by the highway," he said, too fast. After the flooding, their storage was ruined. Kit and I have been moving supplies, logging receipts, tightening loose things until the grant clears. I didn't want to make you carry it. Into what? I asked. My fingers curled around the chair back until they buzzed. Receipts you promised? Gas on our card? A shoebox in our closet? Who is Kay? Kit, he said. His voice softened like he was explaining an engine to a kid. She handles logistics. That's all. We built the little bridge so the seniors wouldn't have to jump the ditch on market days. No one would fund it. We did it anyway. You're shaking, I said before I could stop myself. His hands were just a whisper, like a leaf in mild wind. He tucked them under his arms. I'm fine. I need true, I said. I can handle ugly. I can't handle guessing. My jaw clicked and heat climbed my neck. He looked at the photo like it might bite. That's old, he said. From when I was stupid. We used to call anything a bridge if it got us across something we couldn't name. I should have told you. The apology came out thin, like air from a pinhole. The iPad buzzed. Kit again, quick notes about the ledger and the tin needing to be complete before daybreak. Then, Lila's boy has a fever, don't make her wait. The line hit in two places at once, my chest softened, and my anger stiffened like a spine. Don't go soft on me, he said without force. Not now. He rubbed his neck where the scar begins, like something there ached. I heard the small rasp of his breath. I'm trying not to, I said. But tell me what you owe and why you hid it. I'm the one who shares your mortgage and your cereal. The last word wobbled, I steadied it with a swallow. He exhaled like something heavy finally slid. Because every time I talk about need, it sounds like an excuse, he said. Because I don't want to ask permission to be decent. Because I owe. Oh who, I said, too calm. He stared into the spoon, reading the screen light across its curve. A lot of people, he said at last. But one person first. Outside a long train horn unspooled and kept going, like the world was holding a single note for us. I pulled out a chair. Sit, I said, quieter. Start with the bridge, then the pantry, then the debt. My hands flattened on the table to stop their shake. I'll listen. He sat and opened his mouth. Before he could shape the first word, the porch light blinked on and a patient knock tapped the door, like whoever waited there had practiced exactly how gentle to be. The knock came again, 3 light taps like someone who'd practiced not startling people. I wiped my palms on my jeans, looked at Ryan, his mouth already shaping a sorry, and opened the door. Kit stood on the mat with the cookie tin tucked under one arm and a paper bag hanging from her wrist. A wet line split her bangs. She clocked the table in a single sweep, the Polaroid, the receipt, the lit iPad, and her shoulders lifted a hair, like bracing for wind. Hey, she said, voice low, not edging in. I brought the ledger. And, the thermometer Lila asked for. She jiggled the bag. Children's syrup rattled against the cardboard like small bells. Ryan took a half step toward her, then back, like a tide not sure which job to do. We were just talking, I finished, and felt my jaw threaten to lock again. I made it move. Come in. If we're doing this, we're doing it in the light. Kit hesitated exactly 1 beat, then crossed the threshold. Mud crusted her shoe treads, she turned them neatly on the mat like a person raised to be invited once. Up close she smelled like rain and pine cleaner. She set the tin on the table and didn't sit. Ryan hovered, hands tucked under his arms, a boy at a principal's desk. The pot on the stove made a soft hiss. Something in me steadied at the ordinary sound. I flipped the tin lid. Inside, the ledger, bound with a rubber band that had seen too many summers, a fat clutch of receipts clipped in order, a folded scrap with the bridge list scrawled across the top, and, tucked beneath the paper, a second Polaroid so sun-faded it looked like it had been left in a window for a year. Same younger Ryan. Same half-turned woman. On the back, the same looping K, this time with a tiny drawn span underneath, 2 lines and a dot for the river. My throat found that sandpaper feeling again. You keep souvenirs with your accounting? I asked. My tone tried for casual and came out bright with static. Kit didn't flinch. We use what we have, she said. The photo marks were the first materials went. People remember pictures better than spreadsheets. People? I let the word hang, then tapped the ledger. Or him. Ryan's gaze flicked to Kit like he wanted permission to exist. She didn't give it. She kept her eyes on me. You're right to be mad, she said, clean and simple. But the pantry runs out of money in waves. The bridges, literal and not, are the only way some folks get there without falling. So you build, I said. My fingers tingled, I flexed them against the cool metal rim. You log. You hide. Ryan made a small sound, the kind a person makes when they press on a bruise by accident. I messed up the order of those, he said, trying on a smile that didn't stick. I was going to show you when the grant cleared. You were going to show me after it was safe for you, I said, and the words felt like stepping onto firm ground after mud. He winced but didn't argue. Kit reached into the paper bag and set the thermometer on the ledger like a paperweight. Lila's boy's fever spiked, she said, softening around the edges. She's been alone since her sister left town. If the receipts don't balance tonight, the vendor won't release the next pallets. We told her we'd make it right. There it was again, that word promised. It scraped something tender inside me even as heat rose, mean and clean. Then we finish it, I said. But we finish it here. With me watching. Ryan blinked. Mara. I'm not asking, I said. My voice surprised me, calm as a level. Under the table my knee was bouncing, I pressed it down with my palm. You don't get to keep two lives on different shelves and call it kindness. Sit. Both of you. They sat. Kit laid out the receipts in tidy rows, dates facing up, little gas station logos winking like guilty eyes. Ryan opened the ledger, and I watched his hands find their rhythm, ink careful, numbers straight, the same neatness he used to label storage bins in the garage. He looked competent and small at once, and I hated that those things could live in the same frame. Who's first on what you owe? I asked, not looking at him, if it's not the pantry. Silence pulled the room tight. Ryan's pen paused over a sum. A friend, he said finally. From before. From the photo, I said. It wasn't a question. Kit's mouth thinned, not at me, exactly, at the complication of humans being made of more than one time. She stepped in when no one else did, Ryan said. I keep trying to step back for other people the way she did for me. I don't always do it right. My hands went cold and hot in waves. You step around me while you do it, I said, and heard the tremor in that last word. He opened his mouth, closed it. Kit kept aligning receipts like she could pin the world straight. We worked through the pile, my fingers steadying even as my heart knocked. I read totals, Ryan logged them, Kit checked signatures. It was domestic and not. Every neat addition was a little betrayal laid flat. When we hit the bottom, Kit exhaled like a tire finding road again. Okay, she said. That clears the vendor, if we drive it over. You aren't going without me, I said. Ryan's head snapped up. You want clean? Let's keep it clean. I slid the ledger toward the tote and tucked it in, along with the tin, the photo, the thermometer. I'll put gas in the truck on the way. Ryan scrubbed his face with his palms, then nodded like the weight had simply shifted pockets. Kit stood, shoulders easing, eyes trying, and failing, to read me. I grabbed my keys, the tote heavy against my hip. The porch light threw a pale circle on the front step. I held the door and looked back at them, both of them paused in my kitchen like they weren't sure whose scene this was anymore. Let's go, I said, and the words tasted like something new starting. Outside, the night felt colder. The truck key was warm from his hand when he dropped it into mine. The truck groaned when I turned the key, that old belt squeal Ryan always said he'd fix this weekend. My fingers felt clumsy on the shifter. Kit slid into the back seat with the tote in her lap like she didn't trust either of us not to bolt. Ryan took the passenger side and held his breath so obviously I could feel it suck the air thin. I pulled onto the empty road and the headlights laid a white ribbon down the blacktop. My shoulders sat too high, I kept rolling them down and they kept climbing back. We didn't talk at first. The wipers clicked through a mist that wasn't quite rain. My jaw tested its hinges and finally settled, tight but working. Ryan cradled that apple like a peace offering he'd forgotten to deliver. Kit watched the dark shoulder where weeds flicked silver in the lights. Every now and then her thumb tapped the tin in her lap, the way people check a pulse. At the gas station by the freeway I swung in too fast and the pump beeped its little scold. I got out, the cold air shocked clean, and my hand started that fine tremble I hate, the one that makes keys loud. I slid his card, pressed the numbers I know by muscle, and the display blinked accepted like it was taking sides. I leaned my forehead on the truck door while it filled, metal cool on my skin, and told myself to breathe normal. Behind me, a freight train stitched the dark together with its slow iron sound. "You don't have to do this," Ryan said when I climbed back in. He said it careful, like he was testing the floor in a dark room. "I mean, thank you, but..." "I'm already doing it," I said. "So let's not make it noble." My voice surprised me, low, even. Under my jacket, my heart was beating like it had work to do. Back on the road, Kit finally spoke. "You're handling this cleaner than most," she said, not as praise, more like she was logging a detail in her head. "People panic. They throw the ledger in the river or call someone to make threats." "That an option?" I said before I could stop it. It came out half a joke and half a truth I didn't want. She huffed, not a laugh. "Not tonight," she said. "The vendor closes whenever he feels like it." We turned down the industrial strip where everything looks like a box waiting to be opened. Sodium lights made everything the same bruise color. Up ahead a roll-up door was half down and a guy in a flannel vest leaned against a pallet like it was a bar. He clocked the truck, then us. When we stepped out, the air smelled like cardboard and wet wood. "Y'all finally brought church," he said to Ryan, nodding at the tin. He didn't look at me until I stepped closer and held his gaze. "You with them?" "I'm the one who lives with the mess," I said. My hands were icy, I slid them into my sleeves. "We're squaring it." He shrugged like he'd seen worse. On a rickety desk under a buzzing light, we laid out the stack. No legal talk, no forms with codes, just ink and totals and a signature that looked like it wanted to be somewhere else. The guy counted with the slow patience of someone who enjoys making other people wait. My mouth went dry. I kept swallowing against it and felt the swallow, which made me want to swallow again. The human body is pitiful like that. "All right," he said at last, flipping the last receipt to the bottom of the stack. "I'll call your pantry in the morning. She'll get her pallets." "Tonight," Kit said, voice gentled and firm at once. "Please." She didn't say fever. She didn't have to. He rolled his jaw, then pulled out his phone with a sigh as if kindness cost him interest. While he dialed, Ryan looked at me, not with the old boyish hope, but with something bracing and bare. "I should have told you day one," he said, soft. "I didn't want you to see the part of me that keeps reaching. It ruins things. It always has." "Reaching is fine," I said. "Reaching around me isn't." The words landed and stayed. His mouth bent, not quite a nod, not quite a flinch. We drove to the pantry because it felt wrong to stop halfway. The building sits by the highway, 1-story, cinder block, a hand-painted sign that always looks tired. A single light was on in back. Lila opened the side door with a sweater thrown over her pajamas and eyes that had done too much crying to leak more. She took in the three of us, the tote, the thermometer peaking like a white flag, and whatever she was about to say melted into a thank you that sounded like someone letting go of a rope. She hugged Kit first, then Ryan, then me like she knew exactly where to place her arms so my body wouldn't flinch. "I'm sorry your night looks like this," she said in that soft, middle-of-the-country voice you could fall into. "You didn't deserve the detour." I didn't know whether she meant the ledger or the years. "We'll get through it," I said, and my voice wanted to break on the we. I didn't let it. The smell inside was bleach and cereal. A kid coughed somewhere in back. I felt my spine set like a level. On the drive home, nobody touched the radio. Kit finally leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes like she'd been holding them open for days. Ryan turned the apple in his hands and didn't take a bite. The road made that steady hush. I could feel a plan forming, not sharp yet, but real, the same way you feel a bruise the day before it darkens. I wasn't going to scream, or smash, or disappear. I was going to make sure every hidden thing showed itself in daylight, and I was going to choose the exact moment it hurt. At the corner by our street, I slowed. A motel sign down the service road flickered, the same one from the receipt. The O kept dropping out so it read TL, like a command. I turned my signal off and let the truck idle. Ryan watched me, then followed my gaze. His breathing changed, light and fast, like a person about to run or confess. I kept my hands steady on the wheel. "We're not done," I said. And I turned toward the sign. The motel sign buzzed as I pulled under the awning. The lot was mostly empty, rain beating in the cracks. Ryan reached for the handle like he could open a different night. Inside, lemon cleaner and old coffee, a clerk with a crossword. She glanced up, clocked Ryan, and lifted her chin. "Bridge rate?" she asked. Heat climbed my neck. "Show me." She slid a binder over. "Community block," she said. "Storage, short stays, pantry work. If you're helping downriver, it's cheaper." Her finger found Ryan's name, memo, bridge, the card number I know by shape. "Last week," she added. "Cash before that when the card was grumpy. K signed when y'all were unloading." "I signed," Kit said, steady. "Tarp stayed dry." My molars pressed. "And motel never made it into a single sentence you said to me," I told Ryan. "I thought the word motel would drown the rest," he said. His hands linked like he was holding his own wrists. I told myself I was sparing us. "Key," I said. The clerk slid it over, plastic tag clicking like teeth. We walked the exterior hall. Paint flaked from the soffit, our steps echoed. The key refused, then gave. "Cut wood and dust it first." 2 bins, a folded table, a roll of bags, a dolly with a squeaky wheel, an apple crate full of bolts. No secrets. No pillows out of place. My chest loosened and tightened at once, like running to a cliff and finding a fence, then hating the fence for being there. Kit set the ledger on the table. "Volunteers crashed here after the flood," she said. "Shower, a few hours horizontal. The rate made it possible." "So you did good," I said. "And stacked it with secrecy." "I didn't want you to see the part of me that needs to be needed," Ryan said, voice small. "It's messy. It's also cowardly." My throat tried to close, I made it open. "You fed other people's hunger and let ours run on fumes." He nodded, eyes wet, contained. Kit stared at the bins like they were kids she'd failed. I opened one. Tarps, gloves, a label that said boots, small. The second held notebooks and zip bags of receipts that smelled like mildew. A thin photograph slid from a notebook, sun-faded. Same summer wash as the others. Younger Ryan. Not the half-turned woman, this time a kid, gap-toothed, perched on a rail, joy bright and unguarded. On the back, the same looping K, for keeping me dry. K, heat and chill chased each other up my arms. "Who's the kid?" Kit's mouth went soft. "A long time ago," she said. "Before any of this." Ryan shifted like he'd stepped on glass. "We can talk outside." "No. Here, where you hide your help." I slid the photo back, the glue edge caught my fingertip. "You're going to give me every name you owe and every favor you traded. Then I decide what you get to keep." Kit met my eyes. For a beat I saw not challenge and not surrender, just recognition, the quick nod people give each other on a bridge when the drop under the rails is real. The little fridge hummed. A plan took shape, not sharp yet, but definite, the slow sting, the careful reveal. A voice ran down the hall, a door banged, somebody laughed. Life didn't pause for our private ruin. He did. Names I knew and names I didn't, debts that weren't money, favors stacked like 2x4s, rides, repairs, a roof patch, a loan he never cashed because cashing meant asking. At each name I felt that split in my body, anger rising, pity trailing it like a shadow that refuses to drop. "NK," I said. "I keep paper straight," Kit answered. "When the pantry buckles, I brace it." "That's not all," Ryan said, quiet. His hands opened as if to show they were empty. "Not tonight," Kit said, soft but steel. She lifted the ledger, then set it down again. The dolly squeaked past outside, bright in the hush. I pictured the clerk dragging clean sheets, the same small labor that keeps people alive. I looked at Ryan and felt the shape of the next move settle. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to pull every hidden thread into daylight, at the pantry, at the bridge, so the people he serves would see what he does and what he hides. I would choose when. "Lock up," I said. "We're done here." Ryan swallowed and turned the key. The latch clicked. The clerk rolled a cart toward us, wheels complaining, a taped box riding on top. She spoke to Ryan but looked at me. "You left this last time," she said. "Want it back?" The clerk didn't wait for an answer. She set the taped box on the counter like it weighed more than cardboard. I just slid it into my arms and felt how the corners bit through the plastic bag. Ryan reached for it, then checked himself. Kit's eyes flicked, not at the box exactly, at me holding it. We took it back to the room because I wanted the sour motel light on every secret, and I wanted the squeak of that dolly outside like a metronome for my patients. I cracked the tape with my nail. The sound popped in the stale air. Inside, a canvas pouch of coins, a spiral notebook, a folded volunteer badge with Ryan's last name, a kid's drawing of a skinny bridge, and an envelope stamped bridge, personal in Ryan's blocky print. Under those, wrapped in a rag, lay a hospital wristband, clasp cut, the letters K.L. smudged where a thumb had rubbed. My fingers went wooden. The room leaned a little. Ryan took one step. "Don't make a movie out of it," he said, almost whispering. "It's not." "Let her look," Kit said, soft. She stayed by the door, jacket unzipped like she was ready to leave or run. The look she gave the bracelet wasn't surprise. It was the tired nod of someone cataloging damage for later. I opened the envelope because I knew if I didn't, my head would fill in worse. Inside were receipts that hadn't made the ledger, pharmacy slips, 3 different hardware stores, a coffee charge with a tip a little too generous, and a handwritten note that just said bridge span schedule with times blacked out and names abbreviated, L.D.A.H. The block letters felt like Ryan trying to be tidy while his brain hopped from crisis to kindness. My jaw clicked, I made it stop. The spiral held pages of neat sketches of rails and joints, plus little stars next to items that read more like people than parts. Jess's stairs, Mr. Doyle's ramp, Lila, generator loan, Avery, don't forget. My thumb parked on Avery. "Who's Avery?" I asked, and the word came out steady. "Nobody you need to carry," Ryan said. He kept his face open, like that made the dodge clean. "Someone who shows up." Kit shifted her weight, the floor complaining. "We should get moving," she said. "Lila's got pallets coming and a kid with a cough." I put the bracelet back on the rag, careful, like heat lived in the plastic. I wasn't going to let pity outrun the plan. The plan had been slow blooming since the river path, daylight, witnesses, no room for romance or excuses. "Fine," I said. "We'll move. But tomorrow we do a thank you picture at the bridge. Everyone who's touched it gets tagged. Pantry folks, the vendor, your church crew, the clerk if she wants her cameo. You stand there and tell the whole town what you've been doing and what you hid to do it." I felt my heart knocking, not frantic, purposeful, like a hammer. Ryan opened his mouth, then shut it, the way you do when you realize you've been offered a truth or a trap and they look the same. "You're going to roast me." "I'm going to end the guessing," I said. "If you're as decent as you claim, daylight won't kill it. If not," I let my hands spread. "I won't have to raise my voice." Kit looked between us, something like relief and dread braided in her expression. "People deserve thanks," she said. "And clarity." My phone buzzed. "Jenna, you alive?" I pictured her in the parking lot behind the grocery store, fries in a bag, knowing I would answer when I could breathe. I thumbed back, "Tomorrow, bridge. Bring your calm voice and that camera you swear you don't own." She answered with a dry okay and a heart I could hear even without seeing. We carried the box to the truck. The clerk held the door and didn't smile, which felt like respect. On the drive, the highway hummed and the box thumped my knee at every seam in the concrete. I tried not to look at the overpass where the homeless camp used to be. Guilt tilted toward pity. I hauled it back. Anger held the wheel steady. At home, I set the envelope on the counter and wrote a list on a sticky note because lists make muscles loosen. Coffee, gloves, trash bags, folding table, a cardboard sign that says thank you, markers, extra batteries. I added, truth. Then, in smaller letters, mercy, maybe. Ryan read it, exhaled through his nose, and didn't argue. Before the light leaned in, I wrote the pantry post, kept it plain, and hit send as we turned the truck toward the river. By the time we rolled into the gravel turnout by the river, the fog was peeling off the water. Jenna's hatchback was already there, trunk open, camera on her neck, donuts under her arm. Okay, she said, looking at me, not Ryan. You sure? I'm done guessing, I said, though my hands fizzed when I lifted the folding table. I breathed until they steadied. We set up before the bridge, thank you sign against the rail, coffee in cardboard jugs, a sharpie tied to twine. People drifted in, pantry volunteers, a couple of older guys in caps, 2 teens after donuts, Lila with her kid. Kit moved in the gaps, smoothing small crises. Ryan rubbed his wrist scar and carried that apple like it might explain him. Grab a donut, sign the board, I called. If you touched the bridge or the pantry, write your name. We're taking a thank you picture. Jenna tested the light. Video? She asked. Yeah, I said. Live. I typed 3 plain lines and tapped the red button. When the space felt warm with bodies, I tapped the rail. Friends, I said. The pantry is covered for now. The bridge is safe. You deserve to see who's been carrying the weight, and how. I handed Ryan the ledger. He took it like a hot plate. We kept receipts, he said, voice rough. Kit managed them. Lila kept lists. The vendor released pallets when the numbers balanced. He swallowed. Sometimes I used our household card to float costs. That wasn't fair. I'm sorry. A small human murmur moved through the group. Also, I said, so rumors don't grow in shadow. The motel by the freeway gave a bridge rate for storage and showers. Volunteers used it. There's a binder. It's boring. Transparency matters. I kept my face open. The hardware store guy tapped the rail. He patched my ramp, he said. Didn't take a dime. Someone added, fix my mom's stairs. Then a woman said, also he ignored my texts for weeks, and people laughed, which helped. Kit stepped forward, not for applause, just clarity. If you've got receipts that never got turned in, bring them to the pantry. We'll close the loop. Jenna crouched to photograph names. You're shaking, she mouthed. I nodded and kept the phone steady. A notification slid across the screen from a name that dried my mouth, Avery. You made it look nice, the comment read. Another came fast, don't forget the left bank. That crew worked at night. Ryan saw it over my shoulder. His breathing went light and fast. Kit straightened like she'd remembered gravity. I want everyone thanked, I said, careful. Names on the board, or in the comments if you can't be here. Ryan's hand hovered near mine, then withdrew. Another ping, a time, a trail reference, initials. Eyes tilted to the screen. I ended the stream. The air felt a degree cooler. We posed. Jenna counted down. Shoulders bumped, donuts hovered away from shirts. The shutter clacked in friendly bursts. I could feel Ryan beside me, not touching, like a space heater turned low. Kit stood on his other side, chin up, the tin tucked under her elbow like a book. When Jenna finished, she lowered the camera and blew out a breath. I started the part I'd planned to hurt, clean and quiet. Before we break, one more thanks, I said, voice even. To the motel clerk for the storage key, to the vendor who released pallets after hours, and to the folks who met at odd times when the trail was empty. I let that sit. If you were asked to keep things off the record, you don't have to anymore. Ryan's jaw moved once like he might speak. He didn't. Kit's fingers tightened on the tin, the rubber band creaked. Lila's eyes went shiny and stubborn. Tires rolled over gravel behind us and a bike brake sang. A voice called Ryan's name the way you call someone you used to reach in one word. The crowd turned as one. A rider coasted in from the trees, hoodie up, a cardboard tube slung by a strap. They stopped, kicked the stand, and pushed the hood back with a forearm. Young, tired, familiar in the way of someone who's lived at the edge of your life for years. Avery, I knew before anyone said it. Left bank crew, they said, breathing hard, a grin trying and failing. Brought the missing piece. Ryan took a tiny step forward and then checked himself, like the rail had grown higher. I felt my pulse move from my throat to my wrists, steady now. This was the moment daylight touches what you think can't stand it. I didn't move to soften anything. I wanted the whole picture in the frame. Avery swung off the bike with that light, tired swagger kids pick up when they've been hauling more than they should. The cardboard tube bumped their hip. They lifted it like a flag and grinned toward the crowd, then toward Ryan, then at me, gauging where to land. My mouth tasted like pennies. I felt my shoulders climb and made them drop. Missing piece, Avery said, breath fogging just enough to show. Left bank crew wanted to be in the picture, even if we're late. They slid the cap and shook the tube. A rolled banner eased out, hand-painted, letters a little crooked, names stacked and ringed with little bridges drawn in marker. Someone had glued snapshots along the bottom, muddy shoes, gloved hands, a night shot where a headlamp caught sawdust like snow. The last photo was Ryan and Kit in profile, forehead to forehead, not kissing, bracing, his hand at her elbow, her mouth set like you do when pain isn't a thing you can put down. Heat raced up my neck and then cooled, like a wave met glass. It goes here, Avery said, tapping the rail where our thank you sign tilted. So folks know who kept the planks from floating off. Jenna, bless her timing, said, let's get it in the frame, and lifted the camera again. People shifted, the way crowds do when they want to help but don't want to ruin it. Lila's kid tugged at her sleeve until she let him hold a corner of the banner, fingers sticky with donut glaze. Ryan reached too, his hand hovered an inch from Kit's and then retreated, small. I cleared my throat and found the voice I'd been borrowing all morning, the steady one. Avery, I said. Tell them how the left bank worked. Avery looked at me, then at Ryan, who didn't save them. We did nights, they said. Heat was bad. Day crews had jobs, kids. We'd meet after last bus, carry boards in quiet so we wouldn't wake the river houses. Kit kept the math straight. He, a chin flick at Ryan, kept the boards level. I held the light and, ran for stuff. And sometimes I sat with Kay so they could finish without leaving her. The words came soft, like they'd been practiced alone and never said out loud. Kay, my jaw tested its hinges. The crowd made that human sound again, part sympathy, part curiosity. Kit's eyes found the banner's bottom edge like she could disappear into paper. Ryan's breath went small and quick. I could feel the wristband in my memory, the letters rubbed thin. Names, I said, easy, like we were doing inventory. Left bank crew, sign the board, sign the banner. Nobody's invisible. I slid the Sharpie across the rail. Fingers reached, ink squeaked, sleeves brushed. Jenna kept shooting, hands steady, mouth a flat line of focus. Avery unrolled the last curl. Behind it, a thin strip of tracing paper fluttered loose, taped to the back, pale pencil lines, a little sketch of the span and, along the margin, a note in careful block letters, don't let her do stairs alone. Under it, 2 initials, small, K.L. The letters hit me like fingers to the sternum. Not proof, not yet, a breadcrumb I'd already tasted. I palmed the scrap without thinking, like catching a falling leaf, and slid it under the lip of the thank you sign. My hands were shaking again. I laced my fingers around the rail until the wood steadied me. Let's mount it, I said. Right there. I pointed to the post before the midpoint, where every passerby would have to see it. Ryan, pick the spot. Don't overthink it. He flinched at my voice and then obeyed, feet on the plank he'd replaced, fingers finding the twine notches like they'd been waiting for him. Kit knotted the far corner, brisk and efficient. Avery fed the line through the bottom grommets, cheeks flushed high with the kind of pride that scares you because you think it might not survive daylight. While they worked, I leaned toward Lila. "You good?" I asked, keeping it private in a public space. She nodded, eyes shining with stubbornness. "I don't care about the messy, honey," she said under the noise. "I care about food on shelves and people not falling." Her hand squeezed mine quick, bones and warmth and something like forgiveness I didn't ask for. Ryan tightened the last knot. He looked at me then, not for permission, not for a rescue, just to be seen. I let him have that, because it cost me nothing and bought me calm. "Okay," I said, louder. "Step back. Take it in." We did. The banner hung a little crooked. The names crowded sweet and imperfect. The photo at the bottom caught the light and made their foreheads glow like a halo someone would make fun of later. Jenna's camera clicked in a clean little burst that sounded like a seal being made. "Say the line," Jenna called, because she knows a beat when she hears it. I didn't plan to, but the words were there. I tapped the plank with my knuckle. "For the bridge we built," I said, mouth steady, and the phrase rolled out over the boards like something shaped to fit them. A few heads turned. Kit's eyes flinched. Ryan swallowed. Avery smiled with their whole tired face. Then the river did its river thing, took a stick, bumped it against the pilings, made a wet cluck that snapped the spell. People clapped, scattered, hugged, promised casseroles and car rides. The air loosened. The banner breathed in the breeze. I told Jenna to keep the camera up because the next part, the part I'd been walking toward since the kitchen, needed witnesses too. I walked to the rail, slid the tracing scrap back out with 2 fingers, and set it on top of the ledger where everyone could see the neat, worried letters and those tiny initials. "We're almost done," I said, to the crowd and to myself. "One more thing." And the way Ryan looked at that strip told me Act 1 of my revenge had landed, and Act 2 was already on the way. The river's hush swallowed the chatter when I set the tracing scrap on the ledger. I kept my voice even so my hands wouldn't shake. "Read it," I told Ryan. Out loud. He stared at the pencil lines like they were a cliff. Kit's mouth pressed flat. Avery's fingers worried the banner edge, tiny tremors I could feel. Ryan cleared his throat. "It says, 'Don't let her do stairs alone. K.L.'" The initials hung there, light and heavy at once. Heads tilted, a small ripple moving through the group. The banner lifted and fell, a slow breath. "Who's her?" I asked. Not sharp. Not soft. My jaw wanted to lock, I made it move. "And why is the note taped behind your thank you?" He opened his mouth, closed it. Kit took half a step forward, not to shield him, to steady the ground. "We leave notes where people will find them when the light's right," she said. "River eats paper. Tape buys time." "Okay," I said. "But who?" Avery blurted, "She," and stopped, eyes flicking to Kit. Their breath came short, like they'd pedaled uphill with a full backpack. Nights were rough. She didn't like the lamps. We tried to be quiet. Lila shifted closer, shoulders squared like she'd take whatever spillover hit the pantry. "People don't owe their insides," she said, gentle but firm. "They owe each other help." "I'm not digging for gossip," I said. My voice shook, I rode the shake. "I'm dragging the hidden parts into daylight because I was kept out of them. That's it." Ryan rubbed the scar at his wrist until the skin went pink. "It's not the story you think," he said, looking at the river as if it might coach him. "But I still hid it from you. That's on me." "Then bring it here," I said. "No half rooms. No motel binders. Here." Kit's eyes lifted to the photo on the banner where their foreheads almost touched. She winced like the picture had teeth. "It started a long time ago," she said, each word neat. "It kept starting. We put weight where we could. Sometimes the weight was more person than plank." Avery nodded, cheeks chapped. "Left bank wasn't just lumber," they said. "Sometimes it was watching a door. Jenna's camera kept clicking in soft bursts. I felt the shudder through my ribs. The vendor guy hovered, uncomfortable. The motel clerk stood behind the crowd with her arms folded, like she'd seen this scene in 100 lobbies. I swallowed the taste of pennies and stepped into cold water. "We're taking the banner to the pantry," I said. "Then the motel." Then, I looked at Ryan. "We go where her is. We return what we found. You talk. I stand beside you, not behind." "Now?" he asked, small. "Now," I said. "Before the story grows teeth." Lila nodded once. "I'll follow," she said. The vendor guy didn't leave. The clerk fished a ring of keys from her pocket and spun it like a coin. We packed fast. Jenna looped her strap, tucked donuts into a box, slid the banner into its tube. Avery straddled the bike like they'd never gotten off and looked at me with a question I felt in my sternum. "Stay close," I said. They pushed off, wheels whispering. On the walk to the truck, Ryan touched my elbow and flinched like he'd burned himself on the idea of contact. "I'm scared you'll hate the real story more than the guessing," he said. He wasn't fishing. It came out like a truth his body had been holding in its teeth. "I might," I said. "And I'm still doing this." The road up from the river curved through cottonwoods, leaves making that soft hand sound. The banner tube rolled against Ryan's knee. He caught it and held on. Kit sat straight-backed, chin up, the tin hugged to her ribs. My mouth was desert dry, every swallow sounded loud. The motel sign flickered once in the rear view, tell, like a metronome for bad decisions. I didn't turn left toward home. I turned right toward the edge of town where porches sag and yards are mostly dirt. I could feel Ryan realize where we were going even before he spoke. The air in the cab changed, thinner, warmer, like the engine had shifted notes. He said my name like a warning and a plea in one breath. I kept my hands steady on the wheel and let the road carry us to the place where the banner would have to hang inside, and the truth would have to stand up. The houses thin out until they're mostly porches and dirt, chain link and sun-faded flags. Avery rides ahead, one hand on the tube, the other loose, like they've memorized these cracks in the street. I feel Ryan realize where we're going, his shoulders go high and tight, breath shallow. Kit doesn't look out the window at all. She's watching the tin, thumbs pressed to the lid like she can keep the past from rattling. Avery slows at a small blue duplex with a crooked ramp bolted over 3 broken steps. Wind chimes made from spoons clink in the shade. A box fan pushes warm air from a window. It smells like disinfectant and fried onions. I kill the engine. My mouth goes desert dry again. Lila pulls in behind us. Jenna finds a spot by the hydrant and lifts her camera, not high, low and ready. The motel clerk's sedan ghosts past and parks up the block, her face unreadable behind glass. "Here," Avery says, soft. They set the tube down and swing the gate, careful so it won't shriek. Ryan's hand lands on the dash like he's bracing for impact. "Mara," he says. My name is a question and a plea. "Can we?" "No," I say, because if I let him build a smaller version of the truth, he will. We go together. Up close, the ramp is solid but scarred. The screws on the rail are shiny. Someone replaced them recently and then wiped the fingerprints away. There's a new grab bar by the doorframe, still sticky from the packaging. A handwritten note is taped at eye level, "Please knock and wait." She moves slow. My jaw threatens to lock. I make it work. I knock. We wait. Inside, a shuffle, a cough, the drag of something with small wheels. The door opens the width of a chain and then wider. A woman stands there in soft pants and a big t-shirt, hair in a messy braid, oxygen cannula tucked neat across her cheeks. Not old, not young. Her eyes do a fast scan of our bodies and land on Ryan like a reflex her muscles remember. Then they land on Kit. A hitch in the throat, nothing dramatic, and then composure like a sweater pulled on fast. "You brought half the county," she says, voice husky from meds or sleep. "We don't have chairs for this." "We can stand," I say. My palms are damp, I hide them on my jeans. "I'm Mara." "I know," she says, not unkind. Her gaze flicks to Jenna's camera, then to Lila's paper bag. Leave the donuts on the counter. My sugar's already mad at me. It sounds like a joke she uses to keep people from fussing. Ryan steps over the threshold and stops, hands open, eyes wet without spilling. We came to return records, he says, and it's almost true. Kit holds up the tin like proof. Avery slides to the side, making space without making a show. We brought the banner, they add, quiet. For the left bank. The woman's mouth curves, small. You kids and your bridges. She points her chin at the ramp. That one squeaks. Second board. It's driving me crazy. I'll fix it, Ryan says, like a reflex. My teeth find my tongue. Kit's jaw pulses once. Inside, the place is tidy in that way that's part pride, part survival. Pill bottles in a plastic caddy. A laundry basket flipped to make a table. A walker parked by the couch, tennis balls shaved flat. I feel heat and cold chasing each other under my skin, anger trying to outrun pity and tripping over it. Jenna lingers near the doorway, camera lowered, eyes asking if she should keep going. I nod once. Daylight is the rule. We set the tin on the makeshift table. I lay the tracing scrap on top, the neat pencil line, the initials small and clean. The woman's gaze lands, stays. Something in her shoulders loosens like a knotted muscle. You found my bossy note, she says. Good. People like to pretend the stairs were fine. Who's her? I ask, and it comes out gentle despite the heat in my chest. The note says not to let her do stairs alone. She looks past me at the door, as if she can see the ramp through it. Me, she says. Some nights. A swallow. Some days. Depends. Ryan's hands go to his hair and stop there, fingers laced like a cage. I should have told, he can't finish. Kit breathes in and out like she's counting. We kept things separate, she says. Work here. Bridge there. Pantry in the middle. We thought it was cleaner. It wasn't, I say. It just made shadows. The woman studies me, not unkind, not impressed. You look like you haven't slept right in a while, she says. Sit if you're going to fall. I'm good, I say, though my legs hum. We're putting everything in the open. Receipts. Notes. The banner. No more half rooms. I hear my voice and realize it's not just revenge anymore, it's survival. She nods like she's seen that shift before. Then start with names, she says. So I don't have to pretend I don't know them. Avery, Avery says, stepping forward. Left bank nights. Kit says, chin up. Logistics. Ryan, he says, and it lands like a confession. Mara, I say. Household card. Consequences. Lila adds her name from the doorway, firm and warm. Jenna lifts her camera again, small click like a metronome. The motel clerk stays outside, arms crossed, eyes hard the way people get when they've watched strangers collapse and stand back up for a living. The woman nods. Okay, she says. Then here's mine. Keep it simple. She gives it, first and last. The initials fit the bracelet in the box. My stomach drops and holds. Threads tie themselves without my help. She doesn't look away from me while it happens. Ryan sways like a person who finally let go of a doorframe. We built the bridge so you could make it to the pantry, he says, voice raw. We didn't want it to be about me, she finishes, not cruel. You can say it. About secrets, I say, because that's the part that's mine to own out loud. About him feeding 2 lives and starving ours. She watches me for a long beat and then nods, once. Not approval. Agreement that I've named the thing on the table. So, she says, what do you need, right now, to call this open? I point to the tin, the ledger, the scrap. Truth. In front of witnesses. Then we hang the banner inside that window so everyone who drives by knows this is part of the bridge. And then, I look at Ryan. We start the part where you pay back what you borrowed from me, starting with the card, the keys, and the stories. My hands are steady now. Kit's eyes shine and don't spill. Avery leans the tube against the couch like a baton passed in a real race. Lila sets the donuts down and stands with her arms folded, pantry strong. Jenna's shutter clicks once, catching Ryan as he opens his mouth to finally say everything with the room listening. Ryan didn't start with excuses. He stood with his fingers hooked in his back pockets like a kid called to the front of class and said, "I made a second life out of good deeds and hid it like a bad habit." I kept the pantry running the quiet way. I asked Kit to cover gaps. I let Avery shoulder nights. I told myself I was protecting you, Mara, from the mess. I wasn't. I was protecting the part of me that needs to be needed. His throat worked, his voice sanded down to almost nothing. I'm sorry. No one clapped. The room just breathed. The oxygen concentrator whirred, the spoon chimes outside ticked. My jaw tried to lock. I made it move. Card, I said, palm out. Keys. Phone. Put them here. He obeyed. The metal, the plastic, the small rectangle of his secrets went down on the flipped laundry basket like we were building a tiny altar. My fingers didn't touch them. I kept my hands on my knees, feeling the twitch in my right leg try to start and forcing it quiet. We're going to make a single thread life, I said, not theatrical, just true. You want to help? You do it where I can see. Pantry group chat. Shared calendar. If someone needs midnight boards, they text the thread. You don't vanish to be a hero. You don't spend our money in the dark. You repay what you borrowed. All of it. Kit nodded once, like a checklist slipping into place. I'll route every request through the pantry email, she said. She slid a small brass key from her jacket pocket and set it beside the phone. Storage cage. I've had a copy. You should have known. Avery shifted, eyes flicking between our faces. I can, stop coming by at weird hours, they said, cheeks flushed. Leave stuff with Lila. Or the church steps. They swallowed hard. Just say what keeps it clean. Visibility, I said. No more shadows. My mouth tasted like pennies again. I swallowed until it passed. The woman, Kay, watched me with a steadiness that didn't feel like judgment. Hang the banner, she said, nodding at the window. People drive by and assume I'm a problem. Let them see I'm part of the bridge too. We threaded twine and lifted the tube together. Avery climbed the little stool and tied the top corners, hands quick and sure. Jenna balanced the bottom edge against her leg and looked at me for permission to shoot. I nodded. The banner unfurled behind the glass, crooked a hair, perfect in its imperfection. Names crowded up against paint. Little bridges leaned into one another. Outside, a truck slowed, the driver rubbernecking without shame. Good, Kay said. She looked at the tracing scrap on the tin, those neat block letters, and then at me. You can keep that. Or burn it. I don't need memorials as much as I need rails that don't wobble. I felt something loosen under my ribs, not forgiveness, alignment. We'll fix the squeak, I said. Then we go. Ryan started to reach for the keys, thought better, folded his hands the way people do in churches even if they don't pray. Couch for me tonight, he said, trying to help carry the verdict. I get that. Not even that, I said. You'll sleep where your second life sleeps. The motel storage. You can fold tarps and think. I'll bring a bag. The words came out calm and landed hard. His shoulders dropped, not relief, not defeat, acceptance shaped like both. Lila stepped forward, pantry steady. We'll keep the kids' cough away from your guilt, she said, gentle. You can come fix rails when I call. After Mara sees the text. Kit's mouth trembled, then firmed. I'll stop talking to him like he's a door I'm bracing, she said. We'll put braces where they belong. Avery's eyes shone, they blinked fast. Left bank's fine, they said, almost to themselves. We'll run daytime. The motel clerk rapped the doorframe once with her knuckles. Y'all done airing? She asked, not unkind. I've got a shift after this. She pointed at the keys. Bridge rate still stands, but lose that tag again and I put your name on the board out front. Flat, funny, exactly the tone a room like this needs to keep from floating away. We filed outside. Heat lay low over the street, heavy and used. Jenna caught my elbow like a sister does when your knee threatens to quit. You sure? She murmured. No, I said, and that honesty steadied me more than saying yes ever could. I turned to Ryan. You'll pick up your bag from the house. One bag. You'll leave your tools at the pantry. You'll send me the totals you owe me, gas, motel, any receipt that touched our account. Then you'll meet us at the bridge after dark. One last thing in Daylight's cousin. His jaw worked. What thing? You'll see, I said, because I needed the space between now and then to harden into a decision I wouldn't walk back. Kay stood in the doorway, hand on the grab bar, cannula glinting, shoulders squared. If you're fixing that squeak, she said, bring soap. Dry screws sing. She made a small face. And don't make a speech about it. No speeches, I said. Just rails that don't wobble. We drove off in a loose caravan, the bike first, then our truck, then Lila, then the clerk easing out like she'd been here before and would be again. My hands on the wheel felt steadier than they had in weeks. At the corner by the river road, I didn't signal. I just turned, because there wasn't any other direction left. The bridge sat ahead, pale and patient. After dark, I would decide what to cut and what to keep. And when I stepped onto those planks again, nothing would be allowed to live in shadow. We parked by the river after the streetlights did that early blink, the bridge pale against the dark like a rib. I cut the engine and listened to the hush, water against pilings, a night bird testing one note. Jenna's camera hung quiet. Kit carried the tin. Ryan came last with the motel key and that same stupid apple, turning it like it might answer if he kept it moving. I felt my jaw think about locking. I made it open. Fix the squeak first, I said. Soap. He nodded, took the bar from my palm like a kid taking chalk, and went to his knees. The screws sang once and then hushed, the wood settling the way a chest settles after a long cry. It was such a small silence. It felt like a door unlatching. Okay, I said. Here's the last thing. I set the ledger on the rail and placed his phone and card and keys beside it, a little constellation of choices. You've got a single thread life now. We said it in her living room. Tonight you write where the thread starts. I handed him the Sharpie and kept my eyes on his face. Under the rail, so it doesn't shout, but it doesn't hide either. His hands shook once, then steadied. He crouched and wrote in neat, block letters, the kind he used on storage bins, household float, Mara. Pantry, all of US. Left bank, Avery. Logs, Kit. Then he stopped, breathed, and added one more, owed, K.L., paid forward. My throat went dry and sweet at the same time, like biting a green apple. I nodded. Now say it, I told him. Out loud. He stood, palms open. I lied by omission, he said, voice low but carrying. I fed 2 lives and starved the one I promised. I'm moving into the motel storage until Mara says otherwise. I'll repay every dollar. I'll answer to Daylight. The words weren't pretty. They didn't have to be. They landed like boards, solid. Good, I said. Now you tell me why you needed to hide it. I kept my tone even, because I didn't want to give him a soft place to collapse. I wanted the explanation standing up. He stared at the water like it might translate him. Then he looked at me. Kay isn't an affair, he said, the relief almost ugly. She's the neighbor who pulled me out of a wrecked bike and paid the bill when I had no insurance. Years later, she signed a work paper when I couldn't get anyone to vouch for me. She's the first person who ever said I was worth the hassle. When her lungs went bad and the stairs turned mean, I promised myself I'd keep every bridge under her feet solid. I thought if I told you the whole story, it would sound like I wanted points. Or pity. So I hid it and called it humility. It was fear. He swallowed. And ego. I wanted to be a secret hero. It felt cleaner than being just a man with needs. Kit let out a breath like she'd been holding a shelf. I helped because I grew up where nobody came, she said. I'm bad at asking. I'm good at lists. I used both like armor. Avery scrubbed their cheek with a sleeve. I show up at night because day makes my head loud, they said, small. I liked that nobody asked me why. It should have softened me. It did. It also hurt in that exact, purposeful way I'd chosen. Thank you, I said, and made each word land. That's the truth. It's late, and it lives here now. I took the motel key from the rail and pressed it into Ryan's palm. You go fold tarps. You text totals by morning. You don't call me sweetheart like the word can mend wood. His eyes filled and didn't spill. He nodded, once, hard. Yes, he said. He set the apple on the post like an offering and stepped back. Jenna touched my elbow, the quiet sister move that says I see you, not I agree. Lila stood by the path, arms folded, strong as a fence post. Kit closed the tin and tucked it beneath her arm. Avery straddled the bike and looked at the dark water like it might finally let them sleep. I stayed. I needed to feel the bridge breathe without the weight of a lie on it. I ran my fingers along the underside of the rail where his words warmed the wood. Household float, Mara. Simple, ugly beautiful. Payback, not punishment. Behind me the truck door shut. Gravel shifted. The engine turned, idled, moved off. The motel sign down the road would blink and buzz and hold him while he folded tarps and counted dollars. When the night thinned enough to make the planks gray, I took the tracing scrap from my pocket. Kay's tidy letters looked almost shy in that light. I didn't burn it. I slid it under the same screw he'd quieted with soap, a paper shim between metal and wood, a private promise where the public one lived. Not to romanticize it. To remember exactly how it hurt and exactly how we steadied it. Jenna came to stand beside me. So, she asked. I let my jaw unclench and made my mouth tell the truth. We're not okay, I said. We're accurate. She huffed a laugh that wasn't really a laugh and leaned her shoulder into mine. Water knocked once against the pilings like a soft gavel. The banner in Kay's window would be catching first light soon. The pantry would open. The motel clerk would roll fresh sheets past his folded tarps. My revenge had the shape I wanted, daylight, a ledger with my name on it, and a man who now had to choose kindness over secrecy every single time, without applause. I turned toward home with my body tired and my breath steady, ready to live with a bridge that squeaks less, a truth that squeaks more, and a life that, finally, doesn't split clean just to feel clean.